That's another liberty and freedom, right? Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, parental authority. These are all things we're battling to keep, aren't we? By enemies foreign and certainly domestic. So today it's humbling, as always, to go to Arlington National Cemetery, somewhere I've been going since I was 4 years old. Got a lot of great footage of that. We're going to be bringing that kind of footage to you and a lot more that we have filmed that you have not yet seen. But based on what you have already seen, the interviews and some of the footage and the history stuff, what do you think of it? Have you appreciated it? I have to tell you, to be honest with you, the first 24 hours we were here, I was like, I can't wait till this week is over. Do this. I'll take one for the team. I'll do this. But I want to get back home to my studio. I don't really want to be here. About the 48-hour mark, my attitude changed. And it may have something to do with the weather. The weather cleared up. The sun came out. We were getting some great interviews. And so I started getting a little more excited about it. And but I have to tell you, here we now are on Wednesday evening, and I'm really happy we came. And I'm enjoying myself. And I wish we didn't have to leave on Friday evening because we still have a lot to do. So right now, we're planning on coming back maybe in a few months to record some more, because I think we have some more things to do. Because I'm going to tell you, folks, one of the goals here is to take our weekend Worldview Tube and to start ramping up Worldview Tube on the weekends to be like a History Channel. Not all the shows, but we want to start doing more History Channel type programming because there's not really a conservative Christian worldview type History Channel, you know, and we're going to take advantage of that. So if you appreciate what we're doing, we'd love to hear your feedback. What do you think? Send me an email, Brannon, Brannon, no D in there. I don't care if you call me Brandon, but your email's not going to get to me to do that. So spell it right, Brannon, like Shannon. Brannon at worldviewtube.com, Brannon at worldviewtube.com. Let me know what you think. Now, do you want us to do more of this? Have you appreciated it? What have you liked about it? What have you appreciated about it? And then if you do appreciate us, we need your support. We got to bring in our normal support each month, plus more to cover this trip. Okay? Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. These trips are not inexpensive. Yesterday, after being here on Capitol Hill, all over town, it was late in the afternoon. We had nothing much to eat at all. We went maybe a block or two off Capitol Hill before our next stop, and we thought we'd just duck into a pizza place and get two pieces apiece of some pizza. That's hard to say. Say that several times. And a Sprite. And we sat outside to eat 2 pieces of pizza apiece. Woo, that's a tongue twister. You know what the bill came to for 3 of us to eat? $87. Okay, that's how expensive things are in Washington, D.C. The hotels are expensive. Everything is expensive here. So to come here is not inexpensive at all. Not to mention the time, the energy to be here. A lot of work, a lot of hauling equipment. You ought to see all the equipment we have here that we have to pack up and haul. Everybody's got to grab gear and carry it. So if you appreciate that what we're doing, we need your support. Please consider going now. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you for your support now. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail, worldviewfoundation.com. All right. As always, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All of our great products are there. We don't get paid unless you would do business with these great products that we use too. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Please consider doing that. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Logan, I need one of those. Can you get me one of those? Can you buy that? Can I show that to my audience real quick? Are you a reporter? You're a staffer? Yeah. Okay, I need one of these. All right, folks. Logan, can you hold this microphone? This is what I need. Hold this microphone real quick. I need one of these. One of you out there in this audience, make me one of these, all right? Look at that. Beautiful. Look at that handle. So, beautiful handle. That is gorgeous. One of you carpenters, make me one. I love the blue carpet, by the way. Us shorter people got to stick together, don't we? I was telling my audience last week I needed one of those. I interviewed people like Senator Ron Johnson the other day. So, thank you. Great idea. All right, so who is going to be the carpenter that comes through on that, right? What do you think, Logan? I'm going to have someone who travels with me who just carries my box. Or maybe I'll carry my own box. I'll walk in carrying my own box. That's hilarious. My wife's saying no. Well, you're not the one that's to stand here interviewing Ron Johnson going like that. You think they would be laughing at me if I stepped up on a box? Yeah. I do too. All right, there you go. That's live TV for you, folks. WorldViewTube.com/sponsors. WorldViewTube.com/sponsors. All right. Let's go to our first interview. I think we should start out with our interview with Chip Roy. Let's start out with that one. That was impromptu tonight. Watch this. All right, joining me now is Congressman Chip Roy, and I gotta be honest, we got this interview because we dropped Jim Paff's name. These guys used to work together up here on Capitol Hill, and Jim can't hear. He cannot hear Jim's question, but I know Jim's question. He just gave it to me. Jim would like to know, what do you think of President Trump's budget that he's dropped?
Well, I'll tell you what the president did last week with the leadership of his team, and particularly Russ Vought at the Office of Management and Budget and the good team over there. They put forward a very serious proposal that is important because it holds defense constant, which is important. We need to modernize our defense. Pete's talking about finding the waste there that we can then repurpose towards our troop pay and modernization. But importantly, it cuts $163 billion out of the bloated, woke, and weaponized federal bureaucracy. That takes it back to pre-COVID levels, all the way back to 2017, actually, about 22% reduction in that whole bureaucracy. That is a major step forward for a president to recognize that, put that out there, and to force Republicans to have to go appropriate to those levels. That's a big win. Now, we've got to deliver, and hopefully in our efforts with the reconciliation package, we'll come up with, under the mandatory spending, a pot of money for defense to go modernize, to make sure the defense department, the military is able to go stand toe-to-toe with China and make sure we're the best military in the world. We have the best missiles, that we have missile defense, that we have drone defense, that we have a strong Navy. Those are all things we need to do. The previous regime was so woke and so destructive. Our military needs a pop, but it can't be a blank check. And that's what this president recognizes. He deserves a great deal of credit for that, and Russ Vought and his team did a great job.
That's Jim's question. Now, here's mine. Yeah. One of my former broadcasters, he sadly passed away about 3 years ago, was Dr. Peter Vincent Pry.
Yeah, sure.
He was the chief of staff of the Congressional E&P Commission, and we produced his radio show once a week and his regular TV show. We would love to have him here now because he had so much wisdom. Sure. But as you know, E&P was his thing, and I learned so much about E&P. How concerned are you about E&P when it comes to North Korea, China, and these other countries? And what about hardening our grid? I mean, all the money we've sent to Ukraine, could we have not hardened our grid from E&P for that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we need to make sure that we've got in our national security matrix a whole lot of things that we're not talking about, things you're not mentioning here, like farms that can produce food that we need, medicine supplies, things that we learned during COVID that were important, but also a grid that is stable and secure and reliable. That starts, by the way, with energy production that is actually reliable, like nuclear power and clean burning natural gas, not wind and solar and things that are much more easily disrupted. Batteries that we are setting up in all these places that use up a lot of water. We need to do our part to have a really strong grid based on reliable power, harden the grid, do what we need to do, and then have a strong defense capable of defending any attacks. That is the number one responsibility in federal government, and that is what our core responsibility is under the Constitution, and that's what we ought to be doing.
Let's go real quick while time allows. Iran.
Yeah.
I have a reporter in Israel on the ground. I support the Jewish people. I don't always agree with the state of Israel, what the government does, but I support the Jewish people and their right to the land.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean I want boots on the ground.
Right.
I got a son who's draft age. I think we have to be really careful because I think Peter Pry told me for years that Iran already has the bomb, maybe several. Some people are saying we got to go strike them because they might get the bomb. Well, I think they already have the bomb. How concerned are you that if we were to strike Iran, that we're really stirring something up? And then we have to be worried about Hezbollah here, the terror cells here, the power grid, cyber, EMP. I mean, we have some folks want to go strike now. Yeah. Where are you come down on this? And could it open up Pandora's box where it creates a real problem for us right here on the homeland with terror cells that are here since the borders were so open for so many years under Obama and then under Biden?
First of all, I have a great deal of trust in the president and his philosophy, which I think mirrors mine a great deal. Peace through strength. Something like I was a child of the 80s. I very much agree with President Reagan's peace through strength. We should not be engaged in constant conflict. Very clearly, President Trump agrees with that, right? So I have a great deal of trust that he has no desire to get us in any foreign entanglements. I also know that he's a good friend of Israel, as am I. I believe we need to stand alongside Israel because it is critical for our own national security. It does be very clear. Mm-hmm. And it's also important from the cultural and historic standpoint. Those things are not small. You know, going over there and walking where Jesus walked, going and walking where, you know, the literal founding principles of the Judeo-Christian principles that created the Western world. Those are important. This war is spiritual. This war is, so I think that's critical. Now, as to Iran, look, again, I'm giving a lot of deference to the president. We need to, I think, hold Iran accountable. I think we need to be able to use the power of a strong economy, which is why we need to strengthen the economy under President Trump, the power of a strong military through peace through strength. I think we need to use diplomacy. But yes, we need to make clear to Iran that we have no intention of allowing them to get nuclear capability with strike capability. So you can say what you want about the bomb, but as soon as they have strike capability, this world changes immensely. We never should have let North Korea get that. Okay, that was a mistake. And so we need to, for our own national defense, do what we can to hold that back. So I'm going to pretty much leave it at that and allow the president to go do what he needs to do. But I support the president in pushing strongly on Iran to try to move forward. But what I don't want is a repeat of the Obama deals that allowed Iran to continue to do what they were doing in developing nuclear and get away with complete violation of whatever it was, the JCPOA or whatever the agreement was.
So what you're saying is having bombs one thing, having the missiles or the launch ability to strike is different, and you're saying that they're probably not there with the ability yet.
Well, I don't want to get into what they're capable or not capable of. What I want to get into is Iran is a foe. They are an enemy. They're an enemy of Israel, but they're an enemy of us. They would strike us as much as they would like to strike Israel, and we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to make sure that we are pushing back on their ability to gain and advance in their military capability. That's just, I think, we need to be strong and resolved in that. Again, the Obama approach under the JCPOA, whatever the acronym was, under the agreement then, was a failure. It allowed Iran to strengthen, and that hurt Israel and hurt us. So we need, and I think the president agrees, that we need to be pushing back and checking Iran. Whatever deal and whatever arrangement they reach, it cannot be anything like the Obama deal.
And then finally, where are you coming down on the whole issue of our debt, the death of the dollar? Gold's going up, which means the dollar's probably going down, right? It's not really gold going up, dollar going down. Where are you at with the eventual death of the dollar? How are we going to recover this economy? The Federal Reserve, the federal income tax. President Trump said before he got elected, hey, until about 1913, we were funding a lot of this with tariffs. Where do you come down on all that? How do we save this dollar, or do we have to roll to some kind of other tokenization and assets and gold and land and some new form of currency in our country?
Well, it's certainly unbiblical for our nation to be racking up debt and deficits with false promises to the people that we can't deliver upon and that are weakening our future, weakening our dollar, weakening our national security. That's what we're doing. Republicans and Democrats, they are pretty much equally guilty of it, okay? And I think this group of Republicans, hopefully, are understanding the importance of the resolve of limiting spending so that we can balance the budget. We must, under reconciliation and under all the tools at our disposal. The president's budget was a good start, but now we have to do the job. We can't be afraid of the reforms necessary to actually balance the budget. When Medicaid goes from $400 billion in 2019 to $615 or $20 billion in 25, when it's slated to be over $1 trillion by 2030, and there is no tax on Medicaid to pay for it, right? Medicare and Social Security come out of taxes. Medicaid comes out of our budget. You want to know why our budget's exploding? It's because of the failure of Obamacare expansion that is driving up the cost of health care and that is bankrupting the country with a massive expanded population getting subpar care. We should change that. But Republicans have to be willing to do it. I've never met a Republican who, well, let me rephrase that. So many Republicans come to this town, and the first thing they start doing is worrying about re-election. They're running their campaign for next year. Oh, Chip, if we end up in the minority, it'll be terrible. Look, the fastest way for you to end up in the minority is to do the crap you're doing, which is not leading. Like, do your job. Let the American people decide. But, we do that all the time. And so this is an opportunity for us to try to get it right. $37 trillion in debt, $1 trillion a year in interest. That's at 3.5%, 3.8% interest costs. If that goes to the historical rate of 5%, that's another $2 or $3 trillion of interest. It's crazy. We're going to destroy our country because politicians want to give away free stuff. And I gave a floor speech one time. We're not the United States House of free stuff. We've got to actually be serious. And Ronald Reagan was doing an interview with Johnny Carson in the 1970s, and he said, every politician, if they put forward a program, should have to include a tax to pay for it. Guess how many programs would get adopted if you had to include a tax to pay for it? Very few. President Reagan wasn't a tax raiser. He didn't want the tax increase, but he knew that we will sell our souls to the devil for a vote. And that's what Congress does all the time. I'm a cancer survivor. I got people come in going, I need cancer research. I'm like, God bless you. I want cancer research. But are you going to pay for it? Well, we don't have a pay for it. I'm like, well, I can't support it. I can't support it. It's ALS, all these other things. Like, we have to do our job to save this country. That's actually our job in a Republican form of government. So I'm going to keep fighting to try to not just balance the budgets, let's have actual fiscal discipline and responsibility. Importantly, let's empower the American people to go forward and live their lives and prosper.
Last question for me,
according to biblical principles in defense of Western civilization. And those are the things that animate me every day.
Okay. Jim has one last question. What is that, Jim?
1.5 million in the first year, yes or no? In the 10-year, yes or no?
1.5 million in the first year, and what was the rest, Jim?
Trillion. 1.5 trillion in
1.5 trillion
in the first 2 years.
In the first year,
or 1.5 trillion in the 10
first 2 years, he says. Or 1.5 trillion in the 10 year.
Over 10 years. So what's he asking about the reconciliation package? If I gather his question correctly,
he's right.
Are we? So right now, the minimum we put in the House budget was $1.5 trillion of reductions over 10 years. Target $2 trillion, and then you'd get economic growth attached to that. Then you would assume $4 trillion-ish in tax cuts. That's a lot of wonkery. That to get to the point of get enough spending cuts, then you can have more tax cuts, and everybody's happy. But a bunch of my guys don't want to. A bunch of Republicans are running away from the spending cuts. So guess what? You Americans are going to get fewer tax cuts. That's the model we've set up because we owe you no more additional deficits. By the way, if we get everything we want, the crazy fiscal hawks and conservatives, we will still be basically bleeding $1.8 to $2 trillion a year. We will still go from our current debt of $36 trillion to basically $56 trillion in 10 years. That's if I get everything I want. I'm just trying to save about, $3 or $4 trillion over the course of that decade. So we've got our work to do. We need to understand it starts with the cuts and the reductions in spending. $1.5 trillion is the absolute bare minimum, and our guys are barely even, scratching the surface of getting there.
Thank you, Congressman. And Jim Paff says thank you as well.
All right, tell Jim
thank you, sir.
Appreciate
Thank you. Joining me now is our broadcast partner each and every day on the air at 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern at worldviewtube.com. is Colonel Rob Maness. Colonel, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Keep your boots dry in that swamp there I see you in.
Hey, I called you from Arlington National Cemetery this morning. We got a lot of great footage of the changing of the guard today, and also a wreath-laying ceremony and taps being played. It was a very great opportunity to grab footage to share with our audience and help us with producing more patriotic programming. But while you and I were talking, you mentioned, and we didn't get a chance to get over there, but we're trying to get back. And we're already planning the next trip back here because we knew we were going to run out of time. There's just so much more to film here. But I want to talk about several things tonight. But first, I want to talk about Arlington National Cemetery. And you have a friend there. Do you want to tell our audience about your friend that's buried there?
Yeah, I have several friends there. But one that I was pretty close to is a guy named Major Greg Stone, a U.S. Air Force officer that was working with Army forces. And on the first night of Iraqi freedom was one of the first two Americans killed. And they were killed by a Muslim U.S. Army non-commissioned officer when he threw grenades into their tent as they were prepping to go into Iraq with the main forces and everything. And he's buried there in Section 60. I think he's one of the first Iraqi freedom graves to be buried in Section 60. And our thoughts and prayers are always with his kids. He left his children and his mom and siblings, and just really appreciate their service.
What has our military done to clean that up? I mean, if you have this is how many times, by the way? Didn't we have one at Fort Hood, right? Fort Hood, a military officer.
Yeah. You had an Army officer. I think he was a psychiatrist, actually, that killed 11 people at Fort Hood. The Army refused to call it a terrorist act at first for a very, very, very long time because President Obama was in power. And I think he prevented them from doing that. Eventually, that was designated that, and those folks were awarded Purple Hearts and some other decorations. And the civilian police force and troops, Army troops that stopped that attack, also were given awards. And that individual is in prison, as is the Army NCO, the Muslim that killed Major Stone and his partner. So. Yeah, we have
Are
taken
you
action on that and are looking very intently these days internally.
really? So you think the Trump administration is now, unlike the Obama or Biden administration, you think the Trump administration is looking at possible, subversive people, potential domestic terrorists or military terrorists inside the military now who are, Islamist?
Yeah, we just captured and arrested a Air National Guard airman that's a Hamas operative just within the last 2 weeks. So I think that we're looking harder at it, and we should be, because under the Biden administration, there are untold numbers of Islamist terrorists that were allowed into this country illegally without monitoring, without any vetting. And then you add the fact that we brought in over 70,000 Afghanis from the debacle over there without vetting any of them. Look, it's good that if folks, interpreters that were working with them and folks that we worked with on the ground over there, bring them in and everything. But we didn't vet those 70-something thousand people. So the potential for a very high number of Islamist terrorists and fifth column really to be in this country is very, very high. And we have to look internally in our armed forces and externally.
All right. What else is on? I want you to think about what's on your radar that you need to tell our audience about. But I want to talk to you about the conflict between Pakistan and India. I had Gordon Chang on my radio show / TV show at 1 o'clock Central, 2 Eastern. And he said, look, Pakistan is a proxy of China. What do you make about what's going on over there?
Well, that's very likely. This terrorist attack that emanated out of Pakistan could very well have been orchestrated by the Chinese. But the Russians and the Iranians are involved in that, too. The Iranians are connected to the Pakistani nuclear program. We know that. Russians and Chinese are both connected to Iran. That doesn't bode well for de-escalating the situation. It's my understanding, early reporting showed that the Indian Air Force lost 5 fighter jets last night. To give you something to compare that to, the last time American Air Force fighter pilots went up against Indian fighter pilots, the Indian fighter pilots won. So Pakistani's Air Force apparently somehow took down 5 Indian fighter pilots who are some of the best in the world with the best equipment in the world. That means that the Pakistanis have taken the F-16s that we sold them, and I think they've got a Chinese version of something that's close to the F-16, and have learned how to employ it very effectively, if that's the case. And now they're exchanging conventional attacks on each other, and they're both nuclear armed states. So I think the United States should be stepping in to try to de-escalate that too. But I haven't seen any publicized activity yet. I would assume that at least diplomatic connections, conversations are happening.
Did you have a chance to watch my interview? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but did you have a chance to watch the interview I did with Marjorie Taylor Greene and our talking about our support of the Jewish state, our support of the Jewish people, their right to the land, but our concern about boots on the ground and escalating a war when it's very likely Iraq already has the bomb, if not several of them. Did you get a chance to watch my interview with her?
I did watch your interview with her, and I'm glad you asked her that question because, as you know, I share your concern. There's no reason for the United States to get into a wider Middle East war with more boots on the ground. I've been advocating to pull our ground forces back out of the combat zones in places like Iraq and Syria for quite a few years now, because all they are is targets. Their mission that the senior leaders say that they're fulfilling really isn't a vital national interest to the United States. The oil fields in Syria don't really matter to us. We're on the road once again to being the largest energy producers in the world and net exporters of energy. So it really doesn't matter to us. And quite frankly, where the border lines and those kind of things in places like that aren't in our vital national interest either, just like the Ukraine-Russia border is not in our vital national interest where that border is. So we've got to get our stuff together there and take some actions on that. I share your concern. We don't need boots on the ground. And then I'll add to that, the Israeli armed forces and the Israeli leadership are more than capable of taking care of their own defense. Look, they buy weapons and capability from us. We share intelligence, just like we share intelligence with other countries, including some countries that are called adversaries today. Some types of intelligence on terrorism we share these days, post 9/11. We should support our ally, the Israelis, and they should feel free and not feel fettered by the United States like they did under the Biden administration. And they should feel free to defend themselves and take the actions they see necessary to keep countries like Iran, who makes the threat all the time of annihilating the Jewish people and wiping Israel off the face of the earth. The Israeli people and the Israeli armed forces and government should feel free to defend themselves and take the actions they deem necessary to prevent that from happening. And the United States shouldn't keep them from doing it.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Israel because I don't expect them to do this. But why should we be expected to put boots on the ground in Israel? Do we think that Israel would put boots on the ground in the United States if we got into a massive terrorist red-green axis war with the Marxist and the Islamist on the border of Mexico? Do you think they would send IDF troops over here? And first of all, I don't think we would expect them to, but do you think they would even volunteer to do that? I think they would say, no, we've got our own problems, so we can't come over to your country.
This discussion isn't about whether we're respecting or disrespecting Israel. Nations act in their own interests. I don't care what the liberalism, foreign policy theory experts say. On the realist side, we're right 100% of the time. And realism says that nations act in their own interests. And Israel would not send any of their ground troops over to help us in that situation because they need every single one of them. As a matter of fact, there are some Americans that have been part of the IDF because they felt compelled as Jewish people to volunteer to serve as part of the IDF because they don't have that many people. But they do have the right capability for their challenge, and they wouldn't be able to send troops over here. And the bottom line is it would not serve their vital national interest. That just like it doesn't serve our vital national interest to put more boots on the ground in the Middle East or in Israel or any other country when it's not necessary to do that.
Mm-hmm. President Trump, he's going to the Middle East next week. I've asked several guests this. I'll ask you as well. He said yesterday is a big announcement. He said it'll come out either Thursday, Friday, maybe Monday, he said, before we leave for the Middle East. Do you think the big announcement is some kind of tentative deal with Iran? What do you think the big announcement's going to be? Something he said they've been working on a long time, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal, he said. What do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, and he said it's a big deal, and it's going to be positive. It hasn't happened in a long time. We haven't been able to do this in a long time. I mean, look, I'm a hopeful person. I try to be optimistic about this stuff, even though I've spent most of my life dealing with death and destruction. And I would love to see him announce a deal that the Iranians have decided to let go of and end their nuclear weapons development program and agree to verifiable terms so the United States and other peace-loving countries of the world, including potential adversary or friends of Iran, could be comfortable that that is true. And I would love to see that tied to a Russia-Ukraine peace deal because, as you know, the Russians and the Iranians support each other. That would be fantastic. I mean, President Trump said to the students in Alabama the other day when he spoke to the University of Alabama's graduating class, he said, think big was one of the three things that he said. Always think big. So if he's saying something's big, positive, we haven't been able to do it in a long time, I think it's going to be something along those lines.
Let's go to Ukraine and Russia. What do you see happening there? President Trump seems a little frustrated, does he not, on this issue?
Yeah, well, the staff and the State Department secretary have all said we're washing our hands of being mediators in the peace deal, but I don't think the president has said that. I'm not going to believe that until the president of the United States tells the American people that. I think everybody should have learned that by now about him. all the way down to hiring people and firing people. If it's not coming out of his mouth, it hadn't happened yet. But one thing he did do was reach out to Turkey to engage President Erdogan and Turkey's leadership, because he knows Turkey has relationships with Russia that are somewhat better than ours, and they're a NATO ally. And that's one of the reasons why Turkey's in NATO, is to provide connections like that. And, the Turks had hosted Russia and Ukraine that resulted in the Istanbul Agreement that ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson was sent in to tell Zelensky not to sign, even after he had agreed to sign it and everything. So hopefully that's a good sign that the president's reached out to the Turks to get them engaged in this process, and that we see a pathway to a peace plan. But it is going very slow, and some people are saying it's stalled. I won't go that far yet, but I'm very concerned.
Let's talk a little bit about what we did with you in our closing moments, what we did on Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, we were at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. We spent hours filming, and of course the viewing audience hasn't really seen that footage. I don't think we've shown any of it to them, but we've spent hours filming in Dayton, Ohio at the Air Force Museum, 4 hangars full of airplanes. I know you've been there many times. I think you've even been on board one or two of the aircraft, flown on one or two of the aircraft in there. But we filmed and covered with multiple high-end cameras the, let's see, where we covered the Boxcar, one of the planes that dropped a bomb on, the Boxcar, yeah, that dropped a bomb on Japan. And then we covered other things. What else? What else we covered? Kennedy's Air Force One that he took to Dallas and back. We were filmed in and outside of that to do a documentary. A lot of the president's Air Force Ones through the years and the involvement of Air Force One. What else did we film? The Memphis Belle. We spent a lot of time covering and filming a Memphis Belle. So many planes, I can't even name them all. And then we're going to produce those into short documentaries with voiceover and more footage and highlight some of these special aircraft. Let's start with that, Dayton, Ohio. You've been there. How many of those aircraft have you flown on? And what do you think about what we're doing here and highlighting some of these great American airplanes and military aircraft?
Well, first, thank you for doing that. I think it's critically important that a real American history from on the ground with the actual machines and, where we can, the actual people that have flown them on behalf of the United States in the military and in other ways is documented in a way that our kids can learn about these things. And documentaries is one of my favorite ways to learn about history. So it's very important to me personally. I've personally flown on the B-1 bomber that's in that museum. I'm not sure how many hours I've got on it, but probably quite a few. I'm not.
Let me tell Logan that Colonel Maness flew on the Colonel Maness flew in the B-1 bomber that's in there. And we filmed that one too, didn't we? Yeah, we filmed that one. Yeah, we absolutely did. We also got the what is it? The black. What's it called? The black. What is it called? The SR-71A Blackbird. Went from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. in 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 20 seconds. It was flying over 2,000 miles an hour. That thing is a big airplane. Really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, my family's got a history with that airplane. My dad worked in that program and the U-2 program early in their development as an enlisted man. And the SR-71 is actually the first aircraft that I ever sat in the cockpit of at a private family air show when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Really?
I think, from what my dad told me. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So it's very special.
Wow. Now that one's at Dulles.
I tried my best to get into that cockpit, but they canceled the program just before I got in.
Well, that one's at the Dulles Air and Space, and then we filmed the Enola Gay as well, which will go with the Boxcar. The Enola Gay that dropped the second bomb, right? No, the Enola Gay dropped the first.
Yeah, it dropped the first bomb on Hiroshima. Then Lieutenant Colonel, he retired as a general, Paul Tibbets was the aircraft commander and the commander of the 509th Bomb Group there. I actually flew with his grandson in training in B-1 bombers and met General Tibbets a couple of times. I asked him, if he regretted dropping the bomb or leading the unit. He said, absolutely not. Nobody on my crew, regardless of what the media has ever said, disagrees with it either. It was the right thing to do. We saved millions of lives on both sides.
And of course, they dropped the first one, and second one, right?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit there, Brandon. Yes, they dropped the first one in, I think, August 9th of 1945, and then the second one a week or 2 weeks later on Boxcar was the name of the aircraft that's at the Dayton Museum.
But Japan had the chance to knock it off and surrender, and they wouldn't. So that's why the second one got dropped.
Yeah, and that's why it was necessary to drop them at all. Japan was not going to surrender. The militaristic culture there, the folks that were driving those decisions were never going to surrender, and it was going to kill millions of Americans and millions of Japanese and probably the Allies. So that decision was made. Some people even talk about, well, why didn't we just blockade Japan? MacArthur and Nimitz said they were done, and we did have control and already started a blockade of Japan there. But even with that, the operation details, when you look at it, show that we're going to lose 500,000 Americans just on one end of the island.
All right. I'm going to bring this up, not to put you on the spot, but Logan and I were talking today, come up July 2026, the celebration of our 250th anniversary. I was in Washington, D.C. here in 1976. I was born in 69, so what does that make me? 6 years old? 6 years old, I guess. And I was here for the 200th anniversary celebration in the nation's capital. I'd like to come back and be here in July of 2026 for the 250th anniversary of the celebration of the founding of America. And I think you need to be here with us. I told Logan, I said, I think we need to be planning now, booking our hotels, and planning now and working with the Trump administration to find out what it's going to take to get the permits to have a broadcast booth and electricity and lights and everything to be on the parade route. And you and I sit and do commentary on what's going by, because I'm thinking a lot of it's going to be military stuff, and I'm going to need help. What do you think about you and I co-hosting something like that a year from this summer?
I think it'd be fantastic. You may not be aware of this, but this July is the 250th anniversary of my ninth generation back great-grandfather, William Maness's enlistment in the Continental Army out of North Carolina, what became North Carolina. And, so I plan on having my family with me there in person, celebrate that. And would love to do that.
So we're talking the July of 2026, a year from this July.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So Logan, let's put down a note and start having the team help us find out who we got to get a hold of, what committee. I know there's a bunch of people, Pete Hegseth and a bunch of the folks in his cabinet are on that task force, but there got to be people lower down the totem pole there that are going to handle media companies. I'm sure, Colonel, they're going to plan on conservative, patriotic media companies like ours wanting to come in and have a media booth and the electricity and the lights to plug in our cameras and lighting and microphones and broadcast from the parade route, because I'm thinking it's going to be probably a 3 or 4 hour parade from what I'm hearing. What are you hearing?
Oh, yeah, it'll probably a minimum of 4 hours. But unfortunately, I saw in the media this week that Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri had to send a letter to President Trump to remove the liberal Marxists that Biden has in charge of that committee right now. So we got to make sure we get all the resistors and the Marxists out of it so we can adequately celebrate the real America and the real values that are in the Declaration of Independence.
Absolutely. Why is it important, when we wrap, why is it important that we do these things?
It's important we do these things, Brandon, because this nation, the states that make it up, are the greatest gift to mankind that's ever occurred. We've gotten more people out of poverty, saved more people from war in spite of human nature. than any other nation in the history of the world. And we're not even 250 years old yet. And when you think about empires like the Roman Empire that were around for much longer than that and didn't achieve the things that we've achieved, in spite of their actual achievements, they still didn't achieve what we've achieved as far as helping people with freedom and prosperity around the world. It's very important that we celebrate these things, just like, tomorrow's the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and victory in Europe. And President Trump put a proclamation out about it and said, we're going to celebrate our victories. And we should celebrate our victories for liberty. That's what is in the Declaration of Independence. It's why the nation exists and why the government exists. Protect that liberty. And it's very important that we do that so our kids can see it and then pass it on to their
100%. Colonel Rob Maness, robmaness.com, robmaness.com each and every day right here on Worldview Tube at 2 Central, 3 Eastern with the Rob Maness broadcast. Robmaness.com is also his website. As always, Colonel, thank you for all you do, and thank you for your service to our country, which continues to this day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you going over to Section 60 in Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We'll be right back after this break.
What if there was a product that could help you control cravings, burn more fat, boost your metabolism, promote healthy blood glucose levels, lower inflammation, optimize insulin sensitivity, support healthy blood lipid levels, and support healthy blood pressure? Introducing Bellatrim.
My wife has been taking Bellatrim now, and she said, Brandon, we've really got to promote this because people don't understand this isn't just about a comprehensive weight management. It will help regulate your blood glucose levels. It will lower bad cholesterol. Overall, it's good for your cardiac health. And she said there's a lot of science behind this.
G'day, I'm Dr. Mark Miller for Bella Grace, and I'd like to have a chat with you about Bellatrim, our comprehensive weight management product. Now, most people early on will register a reduction in cravings associated with Bellatrim. How does it do that? Well, it does it by changing the levels of hormones that are associated with either hunger or satiety. It lowers the levels of ghrelin, a hunger hormone, and it raises the levels of GLP-1, the satiety hormone. There is an absolutely fascinating action on a metabolic switch called AMP kinase, AMPK. AMPK is associated with the preferential burning of fat as a metabolic fuel. And as a result, you have a reduction in visceral fat and reduction in waist circumference. It also helps regulate blood glucose. Blood glucose is a huge factor in weight management. It also improves your microbiome. We do that by several ways. One, there's an ingredient in there that stimulates greater diversity. And the other one is prebiotics, FOS and GOS, that help feed the good bacteria, gentrify your microbiome. So, Bellatrim, comprehensive. Enjoy it.
To learn more about Bellatrim and other Bella Grace products, visit melissahousebg.com.
Joining me now is Todd Bensman. Todd, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Hey, Todd, you got an article in the New York Post from yesterday, May 6, 2025. FBI finally investigating terror attack against Jews by illegal border crosser. Wow. What's gotten into the FBI? Tell me about this.
Well, it's hard to tell what's going on here because this was a border crosser from Mauritania, came in from Tijuana, snuck in, and was released like millions of others without any kind of checking or interviews or screening, and went on up to Chicago and conducted a bona fide terror attack, shot a Jewish guy in the back. He survived, then engaged police in Chicago in a 20-minute gun battle, a furious gun battle.
Oh, that's the video. That's the video we have showed many, many times.
Yes.
We've shown that video several times with you.
Yes. Well, the weird thing about this case, I thought it was weird the second I heard about it. It's a terror attack. The guy's screaming Allah Akbar and all that. They found all sorts of jihad material on his cell phone. He survived, and he ultimately was charged with terrorism. But here's the strange thing about it from the very beginning is that this happened just ahead of the national presidential election, which was all about what? National security and the border. And here we have a border-crossing terror attacker in Chicago shooting at Jews, screaming Allah Akbar. The FBI disappears. They take backstage. When was the last time there was a terror attack in the United States where the FBI wasn't visibly swarming all over the place? They take these cases. They're the chief counterterrorism law enforcement agency in the country. Just look what happened with the vehicle ramming in New Orleans recently. It was FBI raid jackets and nothing else. But in this case, it looks like Biden called his FBI people off, put them in the background, and let the Chicago Police Department do the case. It was so close to the election. Anyway, I kept after it and put in a FOIA request for all information about what the FBI did and what they had, and they just got back to us and said, we have an open investigation on that case. So I don't know if they...
Is there any indication? Is there any indication, you know, people say they're lone wolf. I don't really believe in lone wolves. Someone, you know, brainwashes these people, indoctrinates these people, teaches them these things. They don't really buy the lone wolf thing. They don't just act out of, you know, their own free will well, they do have free will. Someone generally has taught them this as part of their theology or their doctrine, if you will. But the question is was this individual tied to a terror cell, or was he tied to a particular mosque? Who was he listening to the imam? What was the imam saying? What's that imam known for saying, particularly during Friday prayers? I mean, these are all the questions I would ask. What country is he from? How long has he been here? What was the purpose he came here for? But I want to know, was he following anyone online? Who was he listening to online? What imam? But what mosque would he have maybe been visiting? Thoughts on any of this, please?
Well, yes, of course. Those are all great questions. Those are normal questions. And those are the kinds of questions that would have been answered maybe had his case gone to trial, but he hanged himself in the Cook County jail before the case could ever get off. And so, you know, those questions were going to go unanswered. He was charged with terrorism, but under a never-used Illinois state-level terrorism statute that had never been used before. The FBI so didn't want to have anything to do with this that close to the election that they let the state charge it. But there's not going to be a trial because he killed himself. So the question is, you know, what did the FBI know, and what were they doing, if anything? That was the subject of my FOIA request. They came back and said, we still have an open investigation on this. So they must be, since the perpetrator is dead, they must be looking at whether there are co-conspirators, whether somebody gave him the money, somebody directed him from overseas, who gave him the gun that he used. I mean, illegal immigrants, this guy's from Mauritania, and aren't allowed to possess guns. That's a crime. It's a felony, actually. Somebody got him a gun, or he stole it or something. There are many, many leads still to be followed here. But the big question I have, I think, above all those things is, did the Trump administration come in and say we've got to actually do a real investigation here? Did the Biden administration shut things down because it was politically inconvenient? It came at a terrible moment in the presidential campaign. We don't really know, but it is. I did interview the wife of the victim yesterday by phone, and they don't want to be identified by name, but she said that, they are still very much interested in learning all the answers to all of these questions. So hopefully the FBI's got a real case, that they're pursuing real people. There might still be maybe another indictment or something else to come out of this thing. But I think it might have required the Trump election to have anything like that happen. Media's not interested in this other than you and me.
Yeah, that's exactly right, which again is why platforms like this are needed, and so we can get this truth out and interview people like you, because again, apparently this is one of those topics you're not supposed to talk about, but I'm concerned that this is going to become more and more and more common. We were here on Capitol Hill yesterday, as we are today, and we're on the House side, and if I were to walk about to my right about 15 paces, I'd be standing right in front of a hearing door, a caucus, a very famous caucus door, actually, where a lot of hearings have taken place. And that room has been used, can be used for different meetings. Yesterday, there was a Jewish organization of some kind that was using that room. And there were a lot of folks from around the country who are Jewish. And I took video footage of it, and we can show it to you. And you had a lot of rabbis. I actually met a rabbi from Beverly Hills and started talking to him. I said, here's who I am. Here's my network. Here's what I do. And I mentioned Dov, who is a former state legislator out of New York, who is Jewish, who fights anti-Semitism. He's like, oh, yeah, I know Dov. I've been interviewed by Dov several times. I mentioned a few other people I know. He's like, oh, yeah, I know them, too. So we were running in some of the same circles. We swapped phone numbers, and he's going to come on as a guest. But what we were talking about was, while these folks were standing in the hallway here outside the rotunda to go into a caucus room that was being used as like a reception room to meet with maybe members of the House who are Jewish, or members that are Gentiles that are interested in the issues about what's happening in the Middle East, whatever the issue was. They were here as American citizens, and there was several hundred of them. They were Jewish. And what do you think all of a sudden showed up?
I'm
Folks
afraid to
showed
know.
up wearing, they showed up wearing their keffiyehs. Their scarves, that checkered black and white scarf like Yasser Arafat used to wear. They had signs. In fact, let me pull up on my phone because I took a bunch of pictures. Let me pull up on my phone because I took pictures of some of the things they were wearing and the signs. And we'll show this to you. We're pre-taping this, as everybody knows, so that what we'll do is we'll just in post-edit, folks, as everyone knows we're pre-taping. We'll just work these in. One of them says, let the kids in Gaza eat. Really? Who's starving the kids in Gaza? Israel was letting all kinds of food in, number one, but the food was going to Hamas people. Don't forget they were giving all kinds of aid to Gaza, but it would go for buying cement to make terrorist tunnels. Someone else had the sign there to free Kahali, that student, the student that they have kicked out of the country. They had all kinds of other signs. Let me see if I can grab another one here in my video. I guess that's, here's one. Stop arming Israel. Really? So Israel doesn't have a right to buy arms from America to defend themselves? I mean, they live in a really rough part of the country, or the world. They live in a rough neighborhood in the world. Why should we not sell them arms? What's interesting is they were passing themselves off. Here's another one. Here's a guy wearing a T-shirt. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Really? You know what that means? Of course,
Genocide.
God knows what that means. It means genocide. Eliminate the Jewish people. They don't exist anywhere. From the river to the sea, they don't exist. And Palestine, of course, is a fake place. Never existed. There's no history. There's no capital. They've never had a currency. It was the Philistines. The Roman emperor said, let's call it the Philistine, after the Philistines, the arch enemy of the Jews. And Philistine, the Philistines, Eretz says, hey, we'll call ourselves the Philistines, the Palestinians, Palestine. No, they're not. Their DNA doesn't match. This is all fabricated. And yet, here they were, holding these signs, lining the wall, And all of a sudden, I see this swarm of police officers, Capitol Police, about 7 or 8 of them, maybe more, coming up to make sure that they weren't going to create problems. They let them discuss with a couple people a few things, yeah. And thankfully they didn't. But we were stopping what we were doing to get our camera ready to film what we thought might sadly be about to happen, some massive disorderly conduct. And after a few minutes, they were asked to leave, and you've had your chance to talk. Now it's time to go. But it was very disruptive, but it was also very uncomfortable for us watching it, and for the Jewish people that were here. I walked over by one of the people, and I to read their shirt. I walked up close to them, and then I walked back toward this couple, this husband and wife, and turns out they're Jewish. And as I stood next to her, she went over behind her husband, stood behind her husband. She was physically afraid to stand next to me. She thought I was with them. I said, I said, can you believe this? I turned to her, I said, can you believe this? I said, this is disgusting that they are here and that they're doing this. Oh, she said, I thought you were with them. That's why I moved away. I said, no, ma'am, I'm not. And I told her who I was and what I did and about our reporter in Israel. And we talked about this fake Palestine. But the fact that you would be in the House of Representatives, people having a meeting with members of the House, and that this woman would be physically afraid so that she would shield herself from me behind her husband, fearing I was with them. And when she realized I wasn't, her husband and I had a wonderful conversation like you and I are having now, Todd. But this is I'm afraid is going to grow. And when I remember when I interviewed Alan Dershowitz, he said a lot of what is going on in these college campuses, these people are going to turn into terrorists. And what did we see not too long ago? Was it down in Florida where a sheriff deputy's son was involved in a terrorist attack there on the Florida University campus, right? Where did he learn this stuff? At that campus? Yeah. So the FBI needs to investigate that. Who radicalized? They say, quote, radicalized, but who indoctrinated that kid, right? I want to know that.
Right. And, the guy that we're talking about in the New York Post story was one of these people. He was mad about the war in Gaza. He had a lot of jihadist material on his phone, and he was wearing a green vest, which is the uniform of the demonstrators on college campuses, these yellow, green kind of reflective workers' vests. He had that on as he launched his attack. He was one of them. And this guy crossed over the southern border March 30th, 2023. And we've been saying for a long time, I wrote a book about this, that there is a terrorism threat about the border. And the answer is always, well, show me one. Well, here you go. Here is the first one that actually drew blood. There have been plenty of others that were thwarted. This one drew blood. A man was shot, and it's on the history books. You can't avoid it. And I'll mention this since you're in D.C. On June 12th, Illinois Governor Pritzker is coming to town. He's being subpoenaed to testify to the House Homeland Security Committee's oversight subcommittee about sanctuary policies in Illinois, in Chicago, and he's going to defend those policies. And I call on congressmen and women on that committee to press him about how his sanctuary policies let this guy into Chicago to stay, and probably more just like him, and whoever else the FBI is investigating still in connection to that Chicago terror attack. Pritzker is coming to town, and he's going to be defending his sanctuary city policies. And nobody really should let him get off the hook without bringing up this terror attack that happened under his watch.
Absolutely.
Under his policies.
Well, we're going to cover that, and then we're going to interview you and play clips if you're available when that happens. By the way, when I was filming these young people, or I shouldn't say young, they were all ages. When I was filming them yesterday doing this, one of the guys who seemed to be the most aggressive took out his cell phone and started filming me. The whole time I was filming them and what they're doing, they were filming me. So they clearly got the idea I was not on their team. When I got their brochure, however, I'm going to be doing more on this and show the brochure and go through it. It was supposedly a group of Christians and various groups, social justice groups and so-called Christian and religious and faith groups that were uniting together in this cause. And the list is long. I got their brochure. And in fact, while that couple was standing next to me, I said to them, "Do you know who they are?" And they said, "No, but they have brochures that they're holding." And I said, "Well, I'm going to get one." So I got one, and they handed me one. I said, "Can I have one?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure you can." I took it, walked back to them and started reading it and telling them who they were. And of course, they want to pass themselves off as some kind of Christians. And of course, this is why, Todd, as a true Christian broadcaster, this is why when I run into my Jewish friends or Jewish individuals that don't know me yet, who become my friends, when I say I run a conservative network and I'm on 74 Christian stations, I then have to say, "Oh, by the way, I'm a strong Christian Zionist," and then their eyes light up. Okay, good. Because just to say you're a Christian to a Jewish person could be, "Oh, he may not like me. He may be anti-Semitic," because trust me, folks, there are so many anti-Semitic so-called Christian groups. And this was going on in the days of Adolf Hitler. This is why the church in Germany dissolved their denominations, united under the Reich bishop handpicked by Adolf Hitler. They were called the German Christians. So keep in mind when you meet someone for the first time and you find that they're Jewish, and maybe the conversation is turned and they find out you're a Christian, you might want to say, "I'm a Christian Zionist," if you indeed are, so you can put them to rest. Because yesterday we had so-called Christian groups who are up here spouting what I believe is clearly genocide and anti-Semitism and the eradication of the Jews from their homeland. Would you agree with this, what I'm saying? Well, how does this ring with you, Todd?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the church is, pretty divided. It's splintered. There's factions and all sorts of things. Nobody knows what's what and who stands where often. And sometimes it changes over time. We didn't always have Christian Zionists around. That's a relatively recent phenomenon. Maybe going to the 80s or something. I mean, you tell me. I don't think it's all that old. And Jews are grateful for that, by the way, that happened.
Yeah.
And, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, it's been a movement that's been around for many decades. There are many Christian Zionists back in Europe that were the ones helping to form the nation state of Israel, May 1948. But you're right, the 1980s, it really took off. And I think that partly took off with Christian organizations due to the increase of Islam and Islamic terrorist attacks and the more and more attacks on the nation of Israel. So I think in the 1980s, people got way more organized, and a Christian Zionist movement definitely grew starting in the 80s. You're 100% right about that. All right, so before I let you go, again, just to recap, we have a terrorist attack in Chicago, a guy that shoots a Jewish gentleman who's on his way to synagogue in the back. We've showed the video, folks, several times on the air, on TV before, and the FBI didn't want to investigate. Now, all of a sudden, that was under Biden, but now under President Trump, they're willing to maybe to look into it. Let's follow the story and see if we can find out some answers to the questions I asked earlier in this interview. Give us an update before we let you go, Todd, on other border issues. Any other border issues? Any good news? Any bad news? What's the latest?
Well, the good news is that the border is still closed and under as close to operational security and control as it's ever been. The numbers are really, really low, a couple of hundred a day cross, and all of them are detained and deported or prosecuted. So that's a good news story. I think it's going to hold for the duration of the 4 years because of the multi-layered policies that are put in place, which, by the way, were always available to Joe Biden and are available to any president and have been for decades. Never let them tell you they needed a big Senate bill or any of that other, comprehensive immigration reform or any of that stuff. They just need to detain and deport with consistency, and it's over. That's it. There is some good news about fentanyl. It's still coming across, but it appears to be coming across in far smaller volumes. 50% of what it was this time a year ago. Now for the third month in a row. And that's because Trump's tariffs have the Mexicans conducting raids, very aggressive military action on the fentanyl labs, but there's still a long way to go there. Trump is not satisfied with a 50% decline. He wants an all decline. And so there's some threat, I think, that he might decide to start attacking unilaterally the Mexican cartels. Take a look at that. The Trump administration certainly has moved all the military assets it needs into place and is surrounding Mexico on three sides with military might. So we'll see if that actually happens. Nobody wants to see Americans coming home in body bags. So it might be air to ground stuff. Who knows? That's definitely worth keeping an eye on. And the interior deportations are not going as fast as Donald Trump promised due to a variety of reasons, a lot of lawfare, a lot of propaganda information war going on to try to drive down U.S. support for mass deportations, but also because they need a budget bill. You're there in Washington. The next thing is Trump's big, beautiful bill. They're looking at $170 billion toward the deportation effort. They have to have that money.
Wow.
If they're going to do it, if they're going to ever be able to get the numbers to where Trump wants them to be. They've got to rebuild the detention facilities. They've got to hire people. They've got to have grant money. They have to have aircraft and fuel and lots of infrastructure to be able to really ramp things up. But I think Congress is going to look kindly on that bill for the deportation effort, but that has to be looked at, and they're not all Republicans are on board with it either. So
That's right. I just interviewed Senator Tommy Tuberville the other day here on Capitol Hill, and Senator Ron Johnson, and of course Congressman Glenn Grothman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all four of them were talking about these rhino Republicans, and so yeah, they've got some serious work to do, don't they, Todd?
Yes, and I think right now is a good time for people who are interested in the deportations, reversing the damage that was done over the last 4 years, might want to start calling their congressmen and women right about now about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. ToddBensman.com is the website, right? ToddBensman.com?
Yes. Yeah, you can.
And then you'll find them on X. All your socials there?
Yeah, my socials all at ToddBensman.com, and my newsletter, if you want to sign up for that, is there too.
ToddBensman.com. And then on X, it's at Bensman Todd. At Bensman Todd is his X account. You can follow him there as well. As always, Todd, great work. Brand new article in the New York Post. FBI finally investigating terror attack against Jews by illegal border crosser. This was yesterday, May 6, 2025, the New York Post, by our very own friend and fellow broadcast partner, Todd Bensman. Todd, thanks for being with us as always.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Todd Bensman checking in. We'll be right back after this break.
True beauty isn't applied. It's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.
All right, we're still here on the House side of the U.S. Capitol. We're going to do a pre-record here with Bill Federer. As you know, we're doing a lot of pre-records this week because we are busy then running off and doing interviews and filming historic sites. But we wanted to pre-record one tonight for Brandon House Live with Bill Federer. We had him on radio today, but there's so much more to cover related to the picking of a new pope. Bill Federer was once a Catholic, went to school over there in Italy, knows a lot about the Catholic faith, he's not Catholic now, but he knows a lot about it. And so I wanted to bring him back to talk about the picking of a new pope. Bill Federer, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Brandon, great to be with you.
All right. Remind our audience, you went to school in Italy. Is that right?
Right. I went to college and spent a semester over there. Actually went over in high school for a summer all across Europe. But in college, the campus was just outside of Rome. So we got a chance to go into the Vatican many times, into the Sistine Chapel, which is where the College of the Cardinals are meeting right now in what's called a conclave. But that's the room where Michelangelo painted the painting of a God with his finger touching Adam and all those famous paintings. That's the Sistine Chapel. And they have erected a little fireplace in there with a chimney that goes all the way up through the ceiling into the roof. And you have the largest religion in the world is Catholicism. If you were to look at it as one particular organization. So 8 billion people in the world. 31% are Christian, about 2.4 billion. Well, about 1.4 billion of those identify as Catholics. So even though in America, the CIA.gov website, you can pick any country in the world and see all the statistics. And so you pick the United States, click on religion. It says that in America right now, there's 46.5% Protestant, 20.8% Catholic, about another 1% other Christian, and then, maybe 2% Jewish and so forth. But it comes out to about 67% of America is identified as Christian, but a third of that, 20% is Catholic. Anyway, in the world, 1.4 billion Catholics, and they're most prevalent in Latin South America, but growing in Africa. The Congo and Nigeria, about 3.3% increase in growth. And so since the history traces back, the popes, there have been 266 popes. And it's sort of interesting. The 12th century has a Irish Saint Malachy, and he had what's considered the legendary Malachy prophecy. He sat down and wrote the names and descriptions of all the next popes till the end of time. And they sort of match up. And the 266th one is either the last one or this current one that's going to be elected. Because, and he says the last one would be named Peter. And there are three candidates, three cardinals named Peter, who are near the top of the list of being considered as potential candidates to be the next pope. So these there's 252 cardinals. That's like the top level. So you have a priest. Above the priest, you have bishops. And then above the bishops, you have archbishops. And above that, you have cardinals. And there's 252 cardinals all throughout the world. Many of the conservative Catholics were upset that Pope Francis let the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, appoint the cardinals and bishops for China. And they have their Chinese movement, the patriotic movement, where basically, so all the ones that were suffering for their faith feel betrayed by Pope Francis. Anyway, 252 cardinals, and only those under 80 years old can vote. And so that brings it to 135.
Now why do they only, so 135 can vote, but why only those under 80? Well, who made that rule?
I think that was probably during the time of Pope John the 23rd, and I'm not quite sure of the reasoning behind it, because you can be chosen to be a pope even if you're over 80 years old. And so Pope John Paul II was 84, and Pope Benedict, the second most recent, was 84. So you can be older than 80, but only those 80 years old or younger can vote. So, but two of them are sick, so now there's only 133 that are there in the Sistine Chapel voting. And so you need 2/3 or 66.6%. And so 2/3 of the 133 would be 89. And so that's what they're looking for. They're looking for 89 for one. If the threshold is not met, right? They write the name down, they pass it forward, then they burn the ballots in a little chimney, a little fireplace, and they mix in some additive that makes it burn black. And so they know that there was not one chosen. They keep doing these ballots over and over again until they come up to 89 for one particular one. So even though in America...
And when that happens, they pour a chemical, and burn the ballots, and the smoke that comes out is white, correct?
Correct. And then they have a cardinal stands up and he releases his statements, habeus papam, which means we have a pope. The word pope means papa or father. Traditionally, it was the Bishop of Rome. Is the term they use, because you had bishops all throughout the whole world, the Roman world at the time, and they started having heresies like Arian heresy, and so all the bishops would meet, and then they would agree on the doctrine. And there were 7 original councils that are very scriptural, and so just about every denomination acknowledges them as coming up with good theology. We still say the Nicene Creed to this day. But then once Theodosius was the emperor in 379 AD, he was a Christian. He went to church in Milan, Italy, and he outlawed paganism. And so now you have a lot of people who had been pagans, and they come into the church and they say whatever the state doctrine is, but they never really had a heart change. And so a movement starts called pietism that says, gee, you can really have a personal relationship with Jesus. And when you do, you're expected to give away all your money and live in a cave as a hermit the rest of your life and enjoy your personal relationship.
Yeah.
Or join a monastery and even take vows as silent so nobody will hear from you again the rest of your life. It's almost like the devil's attitude was, if you can't stop somebody from being a Christian, once they become one, isolate them. Don't let them infect anybody else. And so you just go off by yourself. And so you had different movements, which I believe were the Holy Spirit, and like St. Francis of Assisi, even Protestants looked to him as somebody that genuinely knew the Lord, and he was going to Rome, and he was confronting all the opulence and all the money, and he started the Poor Franciscans, and of course this is 2 centuries before the invention of the printing press. And so Francis and his followers, went into the church and they would open the Bible and they saw a verse, go sell all and follow me, and preach the gospel to every creature, right? And give away your possessions. And so they used those 3 verses as the foundation of the poor Franciscan friars. And they would be barefoot and wear black burlap, and they would go and they would preach this simple gospel. And but then, it sort of got cornered off. And but then Martin Luther, he more or less was just having another one of these revival type movements, but at this time he was kicked out, and they would have killed him like they did John Huss, but he was protected by a German prince, and during his captivity and the sealing of a castle, they had a trap door, and he was up there translating the Bible. It took him a year, but he translated the Bible into German, and the big game changer was the printing press. And so now, instead of just gathering up John Huss's works and burning them, or gathering up John Wycliffe's works and burning them, they couldn't burn everything that is made with the printing press. And so Martin Luther's movement spread. And then you had other countries, like in England, they said, well, we want a Bible. And so they took the William Tyndale Bible, called the Great Bible. They changed it up a little, but every country started having their own Bibles. And so the printing press made the Reformation possible, basically. And but as far as the world goes, there's 8 billion people, 31% Christian, 22% Islam. There are about as many Muslims in the world as there are Catholics. And but as far as Christianity goes, even though somebody may not be Catholic, the rest, the non-Christian world does look to the Pope as a symbolic leader of Christianity. And so when he takes a stand for marriage being a man and a woman, like, John Paul II, the whole world says, okay, that's sort of, but when you have Francis giving these mixed signals of blessing gay unions and, meeting with imams and all kinds of things, talking about climate change when there's, Christians being killed in the Middle East. And I was with Dennis Prager once, and he says, I'm a Jew. He goes, even I see there's something wrong when you have thousands of Christians being killed and the Pope all just talks about climate change. There's a disconnect there. And so there's Pope Francis appointed 80% of the existing cardinals that can vote, 108 of them. So there's the concern that.
So that makes you wonder: are we going to end up with get another duplicate of Pope Francis? Right? I mean, the one I'm watching, by the way, Bill, is and the audience knows this because I've been talking about it for a while. But I'm watching the cardinal from Israel, Cardinal Pizzaballa. He's from Rome. He's from Italy, I should say, at least. He's from Italy, but he's the cardinal of Israel. I think he'd be fascinating from a Bible prophecy standpoint because he's had some criticism for Israel related to Gaza, but he's also had some massive criticism for Hamas. Even he offered himself up as a replacement for the children that had been taken hostage. He said, take me and let the kids go. Now, some say, well, he was put on the spot, and he said, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. He said, of course, any cardinal would have to say yes, but did he really mean it? He probably did, I think. But wouldn't that be interesting from a Bible prophecy standpoint to see a cardinal from Italy, that is he's from Italy, but he's the cardinal in Israel, and maybe he could help confirm a peace treaty, which, as a Bible prophecy guy, I'm watching for someone to come along and do that, and he might be able to help in that. I don't know. So I'm kind of watching Pope, or a Cardinal, maybe Pope, Cardinal Pizzaballa. What do you know about him, if anything?
Not a whole lot, I have to confess. What I've been reading is there's a Filipino Cardinal Tagle, who is considered a Filipino Francis, that he's a couple years ago sang John Lennon's Imagine song at some service, and most Christians think that's not a very religious song. Then there is a Cardinal Pietro Parolin of Italy, and Pietro means Peter. There's a Peter Turkson from Ghana, Africa, and then a Cardinal Peter Erdo from Hungary. And so 3 of the potential names being shared have Peter in them, which that St. Malachi prophecy, the Irish, monk from the 1200s, listed all the popes that would be coming in the future. And so it's sort of a legendary prophecy, but the last one would be named Peter of Italy, Peter the Roman, and he would be the last one. And then the end comes. So,
Well, I guess we're going to find out what happens. So do you think we're going to have a pope before the week is over? Today is, what's today, guys? Wednesday? Do you think we'll have a, I should say we, I'm not Catholic, but do you think the Catholic Church will have a new pope before the week is over?
It would surprise me. I sort of have a feeling that it may take a little longer. But
really? Why? Because normally it's been like 2 to 3 days historically in modern times, I read. Why? You think it takes much longer?
Well, the fact that there are a large number of progressive ones, but the thought is that if they have another progressive pope, that may cause a potential schism. So there's a Cardinal Gerhard Müller of Germany. He was appointed by Benedict, the previous pope. And just last week, he gave an interview in the Times of London. And he talked about the Catholic Church risks a schism if it elects another liberal leader like Pope Francis. The alternative, he said, was a church that risks splitting in two if an Orthodox pope is not elected. And he said,
when you say split in two, what do you mean split in two? How, is that just a figurative, or do you think there would actually become two different churches?
Yeah, well, it's happened at least twice before, where you had very conservative people say, we're going to split away and be Catholic. We're just not going to acknowledge the Pope as a legitimate one. But over time, they diminished. And of course, a lot of the property is owned corporately, so they lose their buildings and so forth. But it was different movements that split away, and the church, continued, but it was for a few years a concern. So Mueller argues that, and this is the London Times article, where he says, the Times of London. He says that the question is not between conservatives and liberals, but between orthodoxy and heresy. I am praying that the Holy Spirit will illuminate the cardinals, because a heretic pope who changes every day, depending on what the mass media is saying, would be catastrophic. He takes issue with crowd-pleasing popes who hug and kiss babies, a reference to Francis. And he says, not everybody wants to be kissed by old men. He said with a smile. That's what this article talked about. So within the church, you have those that want to stick with traditional morality, and then those that are wanting to push the envelope like Francis was doing with there's a whole long list of church leaders that had sexual problems, and instead of being kicked out, a couple of them were kicked out, and he brought them back in and brought them to Rome, and he promoted them.
Yes.
And he covered that up.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that hope that doesn't continue.
I bet there are. Well, the Pope, of course, has a lot of influence on elected officials and lawmakers, and he can sway people when it comes to voting, because he was just flat out lobbying for the progressives all over the world. So we're going to be watching this and see what happens, see if we get a vote with white smoke or black smoke maybe in the next couple of hours. Who knows? Since we're pre-taping this, maybe the first vote will happen right after we go off this taping. Who knows? But we'll be monitoring it as we're broadcasting and taping here from Capitol Hill on May 7th today, right, Logan? May 7th, 2025. Bill, what's your website?
It's AmericanMinute.com. AmericanMinute.com. Historically, I put together a book called The Original 13, and I go through every colony. Maryland was founded by Catholics. Of course, Virginia by Anglicans, Massachusetts by Puritans, Rhode Island by Baptists. And so at the signing of the Declaration, 55 signers, you had, most were Episcopalian or Anglican, and then Presbyterian and Lutherans and Dutch Reformed and Baptists and Methodists and so forth. But then you had one Catholic, Charles Carroll of Carrollton, and then two Catholics signed the Constitution. And so at the time of the founding, 98% of the country was Protestant, 1% Catholic. So we had 3 million people, 30,000 Catholics were originally only allowed in 3 states, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York. And 0.1%, 3,000, were Jewish. There's only 7 synagogues in the whole nation, 3,000 Jews in a country of 3 million people. Then there was an Irish potato famine. Millions of Irish Catholics come to America, and the Catholic percent goes from 1% to 20%. And then there's a backlash toward the Catholic immigrants, but then it settles down, and many states change their constitutions from requiring you to be a Protestant to just Christian. And anyway, I go through the whole history there. But as of today, the CIA.gov website, if you click on the library, the World Fact Book, and look at religion for the United States, it says that 46.5% of Americans are Protestant, 20.8% are Catholic, and then 1% other Christian. And so that comes out to about 67 or so % of Americans identify as Christians. That's a majority. Now, 30 years ago, it was 94%, so it's been going down, but it's still a majority, but about 20% of Americans identify as Catholics. And again, this is, people may not think it's important, but for the non-Christian world, they do look to the Pope as a representative of Christianity for the globe. And so I think we should be praying and seeking the Lord for what's going to happen.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, the problem with so much of today is the word evangelical doesn't mean anything anymore. And the word Christian doesn't really mean much anymore. You now have to ask people, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by evangelical? What do you mean by Christian? What do you mean by that? People talk about Jesus, and you often have to say, what do you mean by Jesus? Who do you say Jesus is, right? We have to ask a lot of questions today, because there's a lot of phrases out there that sound good, but then you start realizing that some of the things they believe, are maybe not what we would define as being the Jesus of the Bible or biblical Christianity. So, a lot
George
of people
Barna
identify,
did a poll. George Barna did a poll and asks basic Bible questions, and really only about 10% would have what would be considered a genuine Christian worldview.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Well, we should be following this, no doubt about it. AmericanMinute.com if you want more information about Bill and all of his great books and documentaries. AmericanMinute.com. Correct, Bill?
Yes, AmericanMinute.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Bill Federer checking in, folks. We're right here on Capitol Hill. Again, we need your support to keep doing programs like this and bringing them to you free of charge. WorldviewFoundation.com. WorldviewFoundation.com. Don't forget our sponsors. When you do business with them, great services and products. When we only put people up there who we use ourselves, their services or products, then you're also supporting us with each purchase. WorldviewTube.com/sponsors. WorldviewTube.com/sponsors. Be right back after this break.
July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from our viewers than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live, and he just intuitively started to eat the phytoplankton out of his fish tanks because he fed the phytoplankton to his shellfish. He was a shellfish farmer. And when he went in for the surgery, the surgeon came out of the operating room and told his family, I have not ever seen anything like it. The cancer is benign, and Tom Harper lived for years. He retired in Hawaii. We're not making any claim.
Here he is in his own words.
Started on a daily routine of just taking a bit of paste, putting it in my mouth, and wash it down with a drink of water. Within about 10 to 15 days, here I am, less pain in my back. I knew that something was going on, so I just kept eating half a teaspoon of this paste a day. I was booked to go for surgery in Victoria where they were going to do what they call a talc treatment. They went in there to have a look, saw something they never seen before, took 11 sites, sent them away for biopsy. I got the news back. Everything was benign. They just did not know what to make of it. Everything was absolutely clean. And I've tried dieting all my life because I'm a diabetic. If it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. My blood sugar started dropping. My weight started falling off. Here I am, no longer requiring insulin, and I was taking 88 units a day of insulin. I can eat just about what I want in moderation, and I have no elevated sugar levels, and I feel fabulous.
People, you hear the word cancer, and they want you to be instilled with fear. Cancer is nothing but a profound failure of the immune system. And what happened with Tom Harper is the phytoplankton is microscopic. It's God's microscopic food. And the Gaditana is the most nutritionally comprehensive strain of phytoplankton in the world. David Hunter studied phytoplankton for 20 years because he worked for Tom Harper and he was there in person and witnessed Tom's recovery. It's about getting pure nutrition inside your cells. And what happens, your body balances again or goes back to homeostasis. And when your body is pH balanced or in homeostasis, disease can't grow. It is literally microscopic, pure single cell plant food with protein and omega-3 fatty acids, omega-6 fatty acids, with amino acids and vitamins and minerals. 1 scoop a day. There's 90 billion plant cells in here just for everyday nutrition and energy and, cognitive support, because this is God's pure nutrition.
Go to melissahousegpa.com today. Discover the science and learn more about the wonderful benefits of Gaditana phytoplankton. That's melissahousegpa.com. melissahousegpa.com.
All right, folks, that's our broadcast for tonight. Did you notice I didn't take any time really to plug too much? We've got so many things to do, places to go, people to interview. I just don't have time. They're giving me the wrap sign because we got to go to another filming. So every time I turn around, they're cutting me short. So I'm not doing a lot of plugging this week. So I just need to trust you to go to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Make a contribution of any size now, worldviewfoundation.com. Will you do that now? I check every day. I go into a back end where I can see what's going on. And I think, are our folks supporting us? And some of you are, thank you. But some of you aren't. You can afford to. Now, if you cannot afford to, don't you worry about it. I don't want people who can't afford it to even try, okay? You got medical expenses, you're a single mom, whatever it might be, a senior citizen on a fixed income, don't you worry about it. You pray for us and promote us. But if you are supporting us, thank you. If you are not supporting us, but you can, will you please do that now? Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Tomorrow, we're going to the Anti-Communist Museum. I'm looking forward to seeing that museum. I've never been there, and bringing you a special report and being live on radio from there and bringing you a lot of TV from there as well. Got a lot more stops to make this week before we go to town on Friday evening. So again, please support us, worldviewfoundation.com. And again, you'll find our mailing address there. Remember, you can always support us too by using our sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All right, roll the music. Let's call it a night. Again, if you appreciate what we're doing, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? You want us to do more of this? Because we're thinking we might come back as soon as September. What do you think, guys? Brannon at worldviewtube.com. Give us your thoughts. BRANNON. Brannon at worldviewtube.com. Logan loves reading your emails. I do as well. So let us know your thoughts. And again, promote us. Get some of those business cards to promote us. You can get those at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Hey, while you're there at worldviewstore.com, you might want to register for our 22nd annual national conference coming up October 3rd and 4th in the very safe community of Collierville, Tennessee, outside of Memphis. Very safe. We only have 350 seats. Over 100 are gone. Sidney Powell, Mark Mitchell, Alex Newman, Gordon Chang, worldviewstore.com. Get registered, folks. Love to meet you in person or see you again. Take care. May God save America.